In June of last year, I said this is the best 4K webcam I've tested, and I've reviewed quite a few, and that hasn't changed. My primary camera is still a Sony a5100, but off to my side, I do have a webcam that I use frequently for an alternate view, and despite the fact I was also sent out their larger, more expensive, and feature-rich webcam, which is truly endgame as far as webcams go, the OBSBOT Tail Air, I still reverted back to the Tiny because it is indeed tiny, and OBSBOT was able to increase the sensor size, the quality of the onboard camera, the lens, basically the tracking mechanics, all the stuff inside the body without actually making the housing larger. Actually putting them side by side, the new one is marginally bigger, but it's like when you're in the locker room and you're like, hey, I got 6 inches, not 5 3/4. Nobody gives a shit, man. It's a 6 incher. But now the resolution's boosted up from 1440p to 4K, and it seems like it communicates even smoother with the software. A quick prerequisite correction before we roll right into this review. Quite a few times you're going to hear me get a little bit confused in my brain. I guess it was huffing rock salt or something. Talking about the pricing and the naming convention. Just completely wipe your ass with everything I'm going to say about those two aspects. The Lite is indeed lighter, not only in price, but also pretty much just price, not feature set, because the original was 4K. This is also 4K, although now it has a 1/2-inch sensor instead of the 1/1. Oh, there's a slash in there. It's confusing me. Basically, the nitty gritty, the bluff bottom line up front is this has taken what is personally my favorite 4K webcam and slashed the price in half from $300, which is so expensive for a webcam, down to $150, the same camera at its core. So without further ado, let's take a look at what I now consider the best webcam you can buy. A quick disclaimer to my audience, the Stallions and Stallionettes, this webcam was sent for review, but this is going to be an honest, comprehensive review. I haven't been paid to say or not say anything about it, and the company does not get an early preview. The thoughts in this video are 100% my own, and if there's any cons, shortcomings, or areas of improvement, you're going to hear about it. So these companies make better products over time. The packaging is pretty much identical to the Tiny 2, and this is called the Tiny 2 Lite. So I kind of wish they would have called it maybe something else like the Tiny 3 or the Tiny 2 Plus or something, because I feel like just calling it the Lite could get it confused with the original model. Not to mention the Lite makes it seem like it's got features removed. It's a cheaper or worser version in the model lineup, and that simply isn't the case. White and red is the theme color on the box. It says stay pro, stay productive. And inside that sleeve, you are going to have your documentation. Camera itself, like I mentioned, same exact size as the Tiny 2. And then you have a little accessory box at the bottom.
Hope you left your body to science, because that's all you have left.
Now, this is the Tiny 2 camera, which is 1440p. I've been using this sucker for about 2 years. As an alternate view, I don't use it as much as I should. I got a little kick pedal down here where I can instantly switch over. Hi! And I'll probably use this a lot more when I start uploading more gameplay-centric footage, because you can see my mouse hand or my controller hand, me doing the Lord's work, clicking faces and smacking noobs back to the lobby. But where I have the camera located is in a little nook or cranny in my bookshelf, a couple clicks off to my left side over here. And I'm going to be able to literally just unplug the Tiny 2 and plug in the Tiny 2 Lite. A quick swap for the new version. Now, this is using the identical software, which actually is pretty good. I mentioned that during my initial review as I did a full tour walkthrough. It's the same. The layout's identical, but I just want to go over some key features if you do get this webcam that you're going to want to change. For example, the initial state of the gimbal. But first of all, how do you actually get this software? Google would be a good place to start. It'll take you here. You got all the models. Don't get confused. It's this one right here, the Lite. Oh, a little pop up here trying to get my email for marketing. Go fuck yourself. This is important to note. You do have an initial firmware update. 3 bullet points. Added headless and lower body tracking mode, added zone tracking, and hand tracking. Now, if you're not going to use any of these features, you can probably skip out on doing the initial firmware patch unless you're having issues. But what you are going to want is the app, which is called OBSBOT Center, and it does have support for Mac and Windows 10 and 11. So this is the out-of-the-box performance with the Tiny 2 Lite. It looks good. You can tell it's 4K resolution. However, it doesn't look as good as the 1440p Tiny 2 that I've been using, and that's because it had my personal settings applied to it. Things like increasing the sharpness and the contrast and the saturation just a little bit. You don't want it to look like Fortnite, but this does look a little bit muddy and washed out to me, so I'm gonna go ahead and tweak her. But sharing my screen, the software is going to give you an initial state for the gimbal where you can adjust where you want it positioned. Also, if you want to auto track, why am I looking at there we go, this one. If you want auto tracking on, or if you want it zoomed in right out of the gate, you can can do that. Clicking right here, you can get a video preview so you can see the changes you're making. However, I wouldn't recommend using this because if you're using a program like OBS or Streamlabs, it's already going to be taking the priority of your camera. So just use that as your preview window. But basically, like I mentioned in my Tiny 2 review, this has so many bells, whistles, and features. Things like gesture, where you can motion like a Jedi to your camera and it's going to zoom in, or lock off tracking. It does have onboard microphone, although I don't recommend that anybody uses the built-in microphone of a camera, just like you ought not be using the speakers built into a monitor or TV, because they're there. They'll get you by in a pinch or a clutch, but it's piss poor performance. Tiny little itty bitty microphones. This is an important one over here. I like to leave the status light on so I can see when the camera is recording, although instead of an LED bar, it's a little tiny dot in the top left of the lens, which is a lot less inconspicuous and noticeable, to where I really need to look over at my camera now to know she's recording me and to put my pants back on. And that is with the brightness maxed out at tree. Now this is toggling HDR on in the manufacturer's software, autofocus, auto exposure, auto white balance, anti-flicker off. They do have 50 and 60 hertz. So if you have like your screen on behind you, it's not flickering. And then down here in the last tab, this is image. I'm gonna go ahead and bump up the contrast to 60. Same thing with the saturation and sharpness. Obviously hue you want to leave alone because that's gonna mess with your color palette. Oh yeah, but that image is now a lot more palatable to there you are. Keep wanting to look over here. A lot more palatable to me. You're probably not going to use any of these tabs at the top. This is going to be the video preview, which you're already going to be using OBS or something. This puts the camera to sleep, which you can set up to do automatically for privacy when you're not using the camera for a few minutes. Record and live camera over here, virtual camera. You're probably not going to do anything like that capture wise from the software. This is just to tweak the image that's being captured. Beauty over here. These didn't do anything for my face on the Tiny 2 or the Tiny 2 Lite, so I don't know if OBSBOT's still dicking with this tab, enhancing it or what, but it didn't do anything for me. And then this is the remote controller. Highlight this if you want to be able to use the remote, and some more options over here. Overall, really good piece of software, and you can set up multiple cameras controlled under this piece of software. So this is the exact angle and lighting situation. Hold on, I got one more that the previous camera was utilizing. How does it look? In my opinion, just a little bit better than the Tiny 2. There is one major con, and I was genuinely hoping that this would get fixed from the original Tiny 2, because it was my only real complaint from that camera, and it's been transferred over to the new one. And that is the fact that the initial state of the gimbal, even when the application is launched automatically to the system tray, so it has software support for the hardware, it's telling it what it needs to be doing, it doesn't center where I want it. So this is okay, I didn't want that either, but can you not do that to me please ever again? Thank you. I have to manually adjust the arrows for the gimbal to get myself centered in this perfect position. Well, perfect. Well, this is what I like. I got the silver play button overhead a little bit, and then you can't tell that I'm not wearing pants. This is where I like my camera centered. They also sell accessories for their cameras. However, the remote, which is Nito Toledo, sent that alongside the Tail Air for a review. It's coolio, but you really don't need it because the software is so good and it does every feature and function that the remote can do. And warranty wise, it looks like you have the standard 1 year of coverage on all the parts, the gimbal, this, that, everything.
Mission goals agreed. Dispatching team to lock up survivors.
So in my personal opinion, this image quality, this picture quality is actually only marginally better than the Tiny 2, the 1440p version, which is going to be on sale now that it's been succeeded by this version. I would still recommend the Tiny 2, last year's model, with the same settings that I'm doing, which I showed you what my personal video settings are. The video quality is only marginally better. 1 year warranty, that's pretty short for a expensive webcam like this. The remote control, you don't need it at all because the software is pretty damn good and can do everything that the remote control can do. My final verdict, I would definitely go with whichever camera you can find on sale on Amazon, although the Lite is cheaper. MSRP wise, it's $150 versus $300, although if the Tiny 2 OG becomes on sale and gets cheaper, just get that one because they're pretty much the same camera. There's some slight revisions or tweaks, but at its core, it is really the same webcam, which is fine because that was my highest recommendation for a 4K webcam, and this is the same webcam but half the price, which are both linked in the description below, as well as my initial review. Drop in the comment section below what you're using to capture your face, your suck hole, and I'll see you stallions and stallionettes tomorrow.
Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Much like the back of the TV, I've got plugs for all of my socials down there in the description below. And your wallet will greatly thank you if you check the description, because there are exclusive discounts on a ton of products, including controllers, KontrolFreeks, keyboards, mouse pads, clothes, and energy drinks. And keep in mind that you, the viewer, keep this channel running. The more stallions and stallionettes trotting around the stable, the better, so mollywop that subscribe button like it owes you money, and we'll have the same amount of fun tomorrow.